So today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. We're going to talk about whether it is wiser to take more salary or more ESOPs. Now, I've run a company for 10 years. We've always had an ESOP plan. We've given out ESOPs to hundreds of people in the last 10 years. And I want to tell you my experiences. I want to also tell you the experiences many of my employee friends who've made money off of ESOPs and many of my employee friends who have not made a single penny off the ESOPs that they've been offered. I have a simple rule to ESOPs in today's day, and I'm going to tell you what that rule is. And this rule comes from my 10 years of experience as a founder, so it will be a little bit biased. Now, I've been a founder for 10 years. I've raised venture capital or had venture capital for 6 out of those 10 years. So, I know a thing or two about ESOPs from a very different perspective than you'd get in a traditional newspaper or a traditional article or a traditional YouTube video. In the last year or so, India has packed on so many new unicorns. In fact, we are beyond the number 100 at this point. India being such a crazy unicorn market and having more unicorns birthed last year than any other year so far proves that there is opportunity. And every time the value of a startup goes up, there are plenty of opportunities both for employees as well as founders with ESOPs to be able to convert those ESOPs into cash and actually make some additional money. 68% of publicly traded corporations in India and 29% of companies that are private in India have an ESOP program, or at least a formal ESOP program. The idea is simple: to give employees and founders a small chunk of the company as an incentive or a reward for the company to do better. Because if you own a small part of the company, actually ESOPs are not owning a small part of the company, it is the option to own a small part of the company. Very important distinction. We'll come to this in a bit, but it is you having the option to own a small part of the company, and when you do that, when you do own or have the option to own a small part of the company, you feel more inclined to put in the hard work. In fact, if you own a decent number of shares that are valued well, you will put much more effort than if you just paid the same amount in salary. In fact, what I've noticed over the years is beyond a certain headline number, the salary stops incentivizing people. After maybe 40 or 50 lakhs per annum, salary is not such a big motivator for people to join a particular company. In fact, between two companies where one company is offering more salary and the other company is offering lesser salary, as long as that headline number is above maybe 40 or 50 lakhs, the employees don't care as much and would rather choose a workplace that they like and a company that can actually be a rocket ship. Less for the money, more for the story that it adds to their careers. Employees in India take advantage of their vested options early, with 90% doing so within 2 years. Now, with public companies, this is mostly due to tax laws, which state that the capital gains on publicly traded shares are tax-free if held for a year or more. Now, I think when talking about ESOPs, we should first talk about the kind of companies you should be looking at. If you're looking at ESOPs and looking at where they might add value to you, I think you should be choosing a tech company. Now, this is going to be obvious when you're negotiating a salary, because 43% of tech companies in India offer 90% of their employees ESOPs. On the flip side, non-tech companies, only 17% of them offer ESOPs to their employees. In the non-tech companies, 75% of senior and middle-level managers are actually given ESOPs. It is not the same if you're a fresher and just out of college. However, tech companies even that playing field and are typically giving ESOPs to most people who are willing to give years to the company and are also talented. See, let me tell you one thing, right? So when you think about salary versus stock, remember one thing. Salary is hard cash. You can take that money to a store and buy oranges or apples or whatever the hell you want to buy. But ESOPs, and until and unless your company is doing well, your ESOPs or your stocks, when you convert them into stocks, are completely useless. They are fictional, they're a piece of paper, but that piece of paper in odd chances will end up making you so rich that after a 5-year horizon, if your company did well, the entire cash component is pointless. This is a probability game. And as an entrepreneur, somebody like me, whose only job is to allocate capital to probabilities, can tell you this very wisely, that the chance of you making significantly high money on ESOPs is low. So here's my simple algorithm that comes from almost a decade of experience, plus knowing and advising a lot of other people on this matter. Simple rule. If you are joining a very early stage company, which means this company is seed or even Series A, and you are getting a decent amount of ESOPs. I'm talking at least, let's say 50 to 60 lakhs of shares, then it is a good bet. Then you should probably negotiate for more ESOPs. Here's the reason. A lot of seed Series A companies, especially if you've judged their potential and you think they could be decent companies, having good amount of stocks in those companies, especially early, is a good place to be. Because even though there's risk of the company shutting down, at the seed and maybe say Series A level, within 1 or 2 years, you'll know. You'll either get a beat of whether the company is going up or the company is dying and going nowhere. If the company is dying and going nowhere, you can quit in 6 months or quit whenever you think it's wise and move on to the next company and take this shot. Again, you're looking for a moonshot, right? You're thinking like an investor and you're also going to be hedging your bets. You can't do it at the same time like investors do. You can't do it in parallel, but you can do it serially, right? Until you find a company whose vision and performance matches the vision, right? Because a lot of people who can talk big, but very few people who can execute big. Now, the reason I value ESOPs here far more than I value real cash is because even at a worst case scenario or even in an average case scenario, the company might end up selling at a decent valuation, like 40 million, 50 million. Plenty of exits are available at that price point if the company has built good technology. Now, if the company has built good technology and sold at that value, you will end up making a few crores anyway. So it's a good bet to take. Now, on the flip side, if you are, let's say, working at a public company or a very, very late stage company, let's say a Series D or Series E company, and you're getting a small pittance of ESOPs, that is still a good option to negotiate for if you believe that that company is either a household name or going to become a household name. Mainly because if the company is a household name and adding that level of value, then it's going to IPO. If it IPOs, then you will usually stand to make a decent amount of money. There is money to be made out of an IPO, even if you have small amount of stock. So it's not a bad option. It will eventually become converted into cash, which is what you want, right? You want that fictional money to become real money. In a seed stage company, having 1 lakh of ESOP is kind of useless. Even the company grows very, very fast, has many investors coming in, has stock buybacks, it's still not useful for you because 1 lakh is too small a corpus to start on. And for the risk that you're taking, it's not guaranteed that this company is going to IPO. In fact, 90% of them are going to fail. It's not worth the risk. You should rather put that into cash and take the bet of something you believe or have fundamental belief in their foundations, right? Those are the kind of companies you should bet on. And also, in my opinion, if you are skilled enough, those are the kind of companies you should work for so that you are merging what you do on a daily basis, your skill set, and the company that you'd want stock in. Now, apart from IPOs, there's also one more place where ESOPs can actually net you cash, and that is in an ESOP buyback program. In India, 29 Indian startups so far have announced ESOP buybacks for their employees last year. $335 million has been spent to buy back this stock. Flipkart did a 600 crore buyback, Cred did a 100 crore repurchase, and so on and so forth. Now, this is obviously great news for the ecosystem because it gives early employees and even employees that join maybe at a Series B or Series C stage liquidity, which means the conversion of fictional money into real money way before the IPO. It's also a great sign because it means that the company believes in itself so much and its fundamentals so much that it wants to buy back. It wants to actually spend money and buy back ESOPs from its employees, which is always a great sign. Usually, at least for me, an ESOP buyback is a mixed signal because even though it gives you immediate liquidity and you get to make money out of it, if the company really wants to buy you back, maybe they're going to have a stellar IPO. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, it's not all rainbows and roses in the ESOP world. The one implication that ESOP brings you is the implication of tax. While ESOPs have potential for future gains, they also carry a lot of burden. The first thing obviously is additional tax burden. ESOPs have two tax effects. The first one is that ESOP gains are recognized as capital gains, which means you must pay tax on them according to your tax bracket. The second problem is that ESOPs are offered often for much less than their fair market value. This means that over time, as the company gets bigger and your value of those ESOPs goes up, that difference between what you were offered the ESOPs at and where it's at today is going to be considered an incentive for you. You are going to be taxed on that incentive. If you make the mistake of converting those ESOPs into shares, and that's what I meant by the option to buy shares, because you have the choice whether to exercise them and buy shares or not. If you make that mistake and nobody buys those shares from you, then you are in trouble, my friend. Right? So making sure you gain liquidity immediately after converting those ESOPs is important. Now, in the situation that nobody buys those shares off of you, you have actually spent money converting those ESOPs, paid tax on them, converting them from ESOPs to shares, and you might not get anything to show for it. The best time to do this conversion is when you know the company that you're working for is doing well and has a high chance of liquidity events, whether it be a buyback or an IPO. If the company is not doing well, then do not make that conversion happen. So here's the bottom line on whether you should choose salary or ESOPs. I think up to a certain respectable amount, maybe let's say 10 or 20 lakhs, I would say up to the point where salary makes your life comfortable, you should take as much salary as possible. Let's say it's 30 lakhs to be very comfortable for you and have savings, or maybe it could be 40 lakhs, whatever the number is for you. It's a personal number. Anything beyond that, which could be nice to have money, that is a great place to park or take ESOPs, right? Especially if you're taking a hit in your salary, that's a good place to take ESOPs. Now, the best companies to take ESOPs at are very early stage companies where you believe in the mission, or very late stage companies where you might get low ESOPs, but it doesn't matter whether you believe in the mission or not, because they will eventually IPO and you will eventually have liquidity. So to answer the question, it is very situational, and I always feel like first make sure you are not struggling from a salary perspective, then play the gambling games, right? And always play the gambling games in something you believe in. Now, ESOPs obviously aren't real gambling. When you work at a company, you'd know if the company is going to do well or not. You'd have some privy to the internal stats, and that should guide your decision making as to how much cash to forego and how much ESOP to take. Also, you have to be careful about the tax implications. That's it for me. Bye.